If you're spey casting with the switch rod, definitely a go-to cast when we're on river left, it's going to be a snap tee. Snap tee basically utilizes a fly line change in direction out in front of me. I point to my target, sweep the rod up over my right shoulder to form my D-loop, then execute my forward stroke. I'm going to take you through that in slower motion and just focusing on the rod tip. The rod tip starts low at the surface of the water. We lift up and we accelerate right back to the same starting position. And that puts the fly line from a downstream position to a practical spot over my right side where I can actually form the D-loop. Okay? So we snap up, accelerate down. Then the rod tip simply lifts and points in the direction of your forward cast. From that direction pointing, we simply bring the rod parallel and flat to the water, and we lift the rod up, curving up over our right shoulder, and that forms our D-loop and keeps our anchor point solid on the water. And we just execute our forward stroke after a little bit of hesitation when the D-loop loads. Here's a snap tee. Snap, reach, pull, lift up, forward stroke. Starting with the rod tip right at the surface of the water, snap, accelerate down to the same starting position, point to your target. With the top hand, sweep the rod up, forward stroke. It's a great cast from river left, especially when you have no back casting room and you want to eliminate false casts to keep your fly in the water where the fish are. It's really the setup for the snap tee that makes this cast happen. And the setup is simply lifting the rod, coming back to the surface, repositions the fly line. When I do that, I need to form a belly 3 to 5 feet below the rod tip. This belly that I'm forming, as I lift and drop back to the water, the belly down here off the rod tip provides load and tension as I sweep the rod around over my right shoulder to set my D-loop up. The other more important thing that that belly does, it prevents the fly from traveling too far upriver. If the fly does travel too far upriver and no belly, when I set the D-loop up over my right shoulder here, the fly is so far upriver that the anchor point never straightens and points to the opposite bank before I make my forward cast. Lift up, down, there's my belly. Now I've got tension and load for my back cast. Anchor point switches around, and it's easy to make that forward cast afterwards. This setup on the snap tee is an example of a good belly. 3 to 5 feet below the rod tip before we make the rest of our cast. This next example is an incorrect belly. Notice there is none below the rod tip. The belly only forms once the current brings the fly line downstream from the rod tip. During a snap tee, after snapping the rod up and down to change the fly line position, simply reach and point in the direction you want the cast to go to. Follow this motion with a straight line coming back to set your D-loop up, maximizing the energy in the fly line to make your forward cast rather effortless. Low rod tip position, the snap, notice the leader pointing upstream, followed by reaching with the rod tip, pointing at your target, and then pulling along a 180-degree line backwards and forward in the direction of your target. An incorrect snap tee is executed when the rod tip is carried around the caster in a big curve. Now the D-loop can't load properly, making the forward cast simply pile up in the water in front of the caster. This curve does not transfer energy into the D-loop. And you can see the fly line piling up. The right way for a snap tee is simply reach point to the target, then pull the rod. Straight line 180 degrees back and forward. And the line turns over with a lot more energy. Starting with the rod tip right at the surface of the water, snap, accelerate down to the same starting position, point to your target, the top hand, sweep the rod up, forward stroke. So here's another great situation, ideal for a switch rod. No back cast room behind me. Now we can utilize some spey casting techniques to eliminate the need for any back cast room whatsoever. This is where a switch rod really shines. Notice the back cast, almost no back cast room needed and no problem getting that fly out to about maybe 50, 60 feet in front of me with almost no effort.